In this section, we're going to talk about the beginnings of meiosis. So we're not going to get too far into meiosis and how it all works in this section. We'll save that for the next section. But you'll see why it's really important to have a firm grasp of what happens in mitosis before we go into meiosis. Okay, because meiosis kind of gets a little bit more complicated. It adds an extra layer on top of mitosis. So cells are divided into two major types. Okay, so all of your skin cells, muscle cells, all of your body cells are termed as somatic cells. So that is basically a different term for just your body cells, the differentiated specialized cell types. Okay, so all of them throughout your body. And then you also have, so these are body cells. Then you also have germ cells, also known as gametes. Okay, so these are very, very specific types of cells, and they're only located in either the ovaries or the testes, depending on which you have. Okay, so gametes are also known as sex cells. Okay, they produce the egg and the sperm cells. So eggs in females are your gametes, and sperm in males are also your gametes. Okay, so gametes have copies of DNA that can be passed to offspring. Now this is where things get a little bit weird, because your body cells, your somatic cells, they are termed as somatic because they each have 46 chromosomes. They have the full number of chromosomes, 2 copies of each chromosome. Okay, so they pair up. 23 pairs, 46 total. Egg and sperm cells, your gametes, are slightly different because they've actually cut out that duplicate number of chromosomes. Okay, so they're no longer in pairs. They just have a total of 23 electrons. Okay, so the chromosomes themselves are also divided into 2 major groups. All right. So here we have our karyotype again. You can see all 23 pairs of chromosomes, and you have your autosomal chromosomes. Okay, so these are the chromosome pairs 1 through 22. Now these are the chromosomes that carry out normal, or have normal genes on them. They control different kinds of things that, like hair color, eye color, skin color, height, propensity for cancer, diabetes, all different kinds of things. How your bones grow, how your muscles attach, how easy it is for you to gain muscle, if you can tan or not. I am in the not category. And then, how fast your metabolism is, things like that. That is all controlled on your autosomal chromosomes. Okay, all 22 of them. Then you also have your sex chromosomes. So this is the 23rd pair. In general, this pair is either going to be XX for female or XY for male. There are some conditions that have extra X's or extra Y's. We'll talk about those later. These are the chromosomes that actually produce your hormone levels. Okay, so the Y chromosome relates to male hormones, and then the X chromosome relates to female. Okay, so the Y chromosome is kind of designed to sometimes override the X chromosome. All right, now we all talk about, if you have XX, you're female, if you have XY, you're male. There are some cases where it's XXY, okay, and so sometimes the X's can kind of overpower the Y. Which would be more female than male. And then you also have times where part of the Y gets detached from the Y and then joins onto an X. So you basically have 2 X's, but you have the genes from a Y chromosome. So there's a lot that can happen with these 2 chromosomes where it's not as clear-cut as XXXY. Okay, so there's a lot that goes on there. But the X chromosome is much larger than the Y chromosome. You can see that in this karyotype here. Okay, so the Y chromosome doesn't have as many genes on it, which is why, and we'll get into this later, but that's why there are Sex-linked disorders, genetic disorders like color blindness is one, where the gene for seeing color is on the X chromosome. So females have 2 shots at getting a working gene that allows them to see colors. Males only have 1 shot. So if the male's X chromosome does not have the gene for seeing those specific colors, they will be colorblind. The female has 2 shots at getting that, and they only need 1 of them to show up as seeing color in order to see it. So again, we'll get into that more later as well. So humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes. We've already gone over this. They are in what are known as homologous pairs. So homologous pairs are the 2 chromosomes are paired that are roughly the same size and contain the same type of genetic information. So if you have a gene for, say, how a specific part of the kidney is shaped on, like here in chromosome 7, okay, you're going to have that gene right here, and then you're also going to have it in the other chromosome, the homologous chromosome. Okay, so you're going to have the same type of genetic information, you just might have slightly different information, genetic information on the 2. Okay, another clearer example would be earlobes. So there are attached or detached earlobes. Okay, y'all probably going to be looking at my ears, but I have detached earlobes. Okay, it means that my earlobes actually kind of dip down before they come back and connect back with my face. Some people, their earlobes just curve directly to their face instead of dipping down like that. Okay, that is actually controlled by a single gene for the most part. I forget which chromosome it's on, but you can have a gene for either type of earlobe, one on each of the homologous pairs. Okay. And we'll get into dominant and recessive later as to how they kind of choose which one is going to get expressed. So for each homologous pair, you're going to have 1 chromosome coming from each parent. So this is why it's really important that your gametes only have 23 total chromosomes, because you're going to get 2 gametes combined together, and that will give you the full number of 46. So body cells are known as diploid cells. So they have 2 copies of each chromosome, and they have 46 total. Okay, so here you can see the purple and the green are the same size, so those are your homologous cells, or homologous chromosomes. So you have 2 copies of, we'll call it chromosome 1, and then your red and kind of your bluish teal ones are the same size, so we'll call those chromosome 2. So they have 2 copies of those chromosomes. Okay, so these are diploid cells. They are generally shortened as 2N. Okay, so 2 copies of each chromosome being represented by N. Gametes are haploid. Okay, so they only have 1 copy of each chromosome. So they have 23 total. So fertilization happens when an egg cell combines with a sperm cell. So you get the egg cell's 23 chromosomes combining with the sperm cell's 23 chromosomes. And that creates a new somatic body cell that has 46 total. Okay, so this is a major difference between the somatic cells and the gametes, is that somatic cells are diploid, gametes are haploid. Okay, so haploid, 2 haploid cells, which haploid is represented just by an N, will combine to form 1 diploid cell, or a 2N cell. So chromosome number has to be maintained in animals. This is one of the more common genetic conditions that we see when in regards to the chromosomes as a whole, is when you start to see extra chromosomes getting added in. Okay. Now you would think you get an extra chromosome, that's not that bad, except the more genetic information contained on that chromosome, the less likely it is that that embryo is actually going to develop into a person. Okay, it just gets to be too much information and kind of overwhelms the system. So many plants actually have more than 2 copies of each chromosome. They can actually be triploid. Generally, that is not in like the body of the plant. It's usually used for kind of feeding the developing seed. Okay, so it's surrounding the seed and acts as like a food source for it. Okay, mitosis produces more diploid cells from diploid cells. Okay, so it produces genetically identical cells, and that occurs in your somatic, your body cells. Meiosis, on the other hand, takes a diploid cell and then produces a haploid cell from it. It actually produces 4 haploid cells from a single diploid cell. So this is actually going to produce genetically different cells. Okay, so that is one of the major differences between mitosis and meiosis. First of all, that mitosis takes diploid and makes diploid. Meiosis takes diploid and makes haploid. But also the fact that mitosis, its goal is to produce genetically identical daughter cells, while meiosis is attempting to make genetically different daughter cells. Okay, so looking at some major differences here. Okay, we can see our mitosis here. We've got our duplicated chromosomes right here with our 2 sister chromatids connected by the centromere. And we have our, this is just showing 4 chromosomes so that we don't get all 46 shoved in there and you can't see anything. Okay, and then when they divide, all right, so note here, when the chromosomes have been duplicated, they are still diploid. Okay, diploid refers to the chromosome itself. So this whole thing is considered a chromosome. It has 2 chromatids, and the chromatids will separate, but it is 1 chromosome. Okay, so this cell is still diploid. Like all 3 of these cells right here are still diploid. Okay, 2 copies of each chromosome. So mitosis is going to produce genetically identical cells and will also result in diploid cells. This will take place throughout an organism's lifetime and can also be involved in asexual reproduction. Not in humans, obviously, we talked about that in the last chapter, but meiosis, on the other hand, okay, so here with meiosis, you'll notice it's going to go through 2 different cycles of division. Okay, the first cycle is actually splitting the number of chromosomes and cutting it down to 2. Okay, sorry, well, from 4 to 2. So this first round of division takes a diploid cell and produces a haploid cell. Okay, and then in the second round of division, you're going to separate the sister chromatids. Okay, so you'll notice that these cells are genetically different from each other. Okay, you've got the green and the red here, and then the purple and the blue here. So meiosis produces genetically unique cells, and we'll see why later even these 2 cells are not genetically identical. It results in haploid cells, and it's only going to take place at certain times in an organism's life cycle. Okay, so it starts around puberty and then lasts, well, for males it lasts longer, for females it lasts only a certain amount of time. And meiosis is involved in sexual reproduction. Okay, so like I said a little bit earlier, cells undergo 2 rounds of division in meiosis instead of the 1 that you would get in mitosis. So it will reduce the number of chromosomes by half, so result in haploid cells, and it creates genetic diversity, which is really important for keeping the genetic population healthy and producing completely unique individuals. So meiosis split into 2 rounds of division. You have meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. Real creative. So you have your homologous chromosomes splitting or separating in meiosis 1. So this is after the DNA has been replicated. And then meiosis 2 is when your sister chromatids are going to divide. So each round of division is going to go through the steps that you're already familiar with: prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and cytokinesis. All right, so that is it for this section, and we are going to pick up on how meiosis actually takes place in the next section.